Good morning. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the November edition of Casita Coalition's 2024 webinar series on ADUs and middle housing. I'm Anne Wyatt, Casita Coalition board member and executive director of Smart Share Housing Solutions in San Luis Obispo. A brief word about us. Casita Coalition is a 501c3 multi-sector nonprofit working to foster resilient communities by championing diverse housing solutions that empower neighborhoods to thrive. We catalyze innovative middle housing solutions through our core strategies of narrative work, systems change, capacity building, policy reform, and technical assistance. With that, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Casita Coalition's new CEO, Noerena Limon. Noerena, welcome.
Thank you so much, Anne, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Like Anne said, I am Noerena Limon, and I'm the new CEO of the Casita Coalition, and it's an honor to be here with all of you as we dive into an incredibly important conversation, which is the ability to convert accessory dwelling units, ADUs, into condos. So for those of you who don't know, like Anne said, the Casita Coalition is dedicated to advocating for smart policies that help solve our housing crisis, particularly by unlocking the potential of ADUs and middle housing. And AB 1033, which we worked tirelessly to pass, removes the barrier at the state level, preventing ADUs from being converted into condos. This is a crucial step toward ensuring that we can create more affordable housing options, especially for first-time home buyers. But before we get started, it's important to understand the reality we're facing. California has the second lowest homeownership rate in the country, with just 55.8% of people owning their homes. This is a crisis which has a multiplier effect on other areas of economic mobilities for communities across the state. And it's a crisis that's been years in the making, years of underproduction, rising costs, and market forces such as interest rates and skyrocketing home prices that continue to push the dream of homeownership out of reach for millions of Californians. This issue is more than just a housing issue. It's really a wealth inequality issue. For Black and Brown communities, homeownership is the _1 way that these communities build wealth. And to underscore the power of homeownership for these communities, homeowners of color that are homeowners have 26 times the wealth of renters of color. But with homeownership out of reach for so many, we're facing a generation of families who will see the wealth gap increase and be locked out of the American dream. So a couple of numbers here. In California, to be able to afford a medium-priced home, which is now around $880,000, a family needs to earn $253,600 a year. Let that sink in. The vast majority of Californians cannot meet that threshold. And yet the most underproduced product in California are starter homes, homes for first-time home buyers, young families, and working class communities. So if we can unlock the potential of converting the ADUs into condos, we're creating an entirely new supply of starter homes, affordable, accessible, attainable. These units, many of which already exist because of the success of ADU policies across the state, could be an immediate solution to the housing gap. We don't have to wait for years of new development to go up. We can activate the housing we already have and make it work for the people who need it most. But for this to happen, we have to take the next critical step, which is go city by city, county by county. We need to work with local municipalities to opt into AB 1033. And local governments need to allow these conversations and these conversions so we can make sure that this opportunity is not just a policy on paper, but a solution in practice. So we're at a tipping point in California. The housing crisis must be solved, and we can do something about it. So as we work to implement AB 1033 across the state, we have a unique opportunity to change the trajectory of housing. So thank you for being here today, and let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. And back to Anne with that.
Here's to it. Thank you, Noerena. So before we get started, it's imperative to thank our major funders for this work. So a thank you to Arnold Ventures, the San Francisco Foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and JP Morgan Chase & Company. Our webinar sponsors, AARP California, and the California Building Industry Association, as well as our new premier members, Samara, Apex Homes, SDRE, Vertical Movement, ProCal Design and Engineering, and Via Homes. To save time, bioinformation for presenters will be in the chat, so look for more details there. And as a reminder, attendees, please use the Q&A feature for questions, not chat, so we can field questions that way. Let's get started with an overview of condo basics and the requirements of the new state law for ADU condos from Jay Drake of Reuben, Junius and Rose. Jay, welcome. Over to you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jay Drake. I'm with the law firm of Reuben, Junius and Rose. Our law firm has expertise and a lot of experience working on ADUs and getting them processed and approved for homeowners. My particular area is condo and subdivision law, so I do a lot of subdivision mapping, parcel maps, and condo documents. So I'm here to talk about the condo law side of ADUs here today and AB 1033. So AB 1033 became effective January 1st, 2024. Prior to the enactment of AB 1033, the sale of accessory dwelling units separate from the primary residence was basically prohibited for 99% of the properties in the state of California. Now, with the passage of AB 1033, local cities and counties are authorized to adopt a local ordinance that allows the separate sale of the ADU and the primary residence as condominiums. Within the framework established by AB 1033, local agencies may craft their own ordinances and procedures. San Jose is the first city to adopt an ADU condo ordinance that allows the creation of an ADU condo that may be sold separately from the primary residence on the property. And San Jose has established its own process and procedures to create ADU condos in San Jose. Next slide, please. Here we go. So I'm going to provide sort of an overview of the basic condo legal structure, just sort of as the sort of foundation and background of all this. Establishing an ADU as a condominium means that the subject property becomes a small condo project. Both the primary dwelling and the ADU or ADUs each become separate condo units. The areas of the property outside the condo units are defined as common area. That's the legal term, which is typically shared by the owners and occupants of the condo units. And then there may also be exclusive use common area, which is another legal term, which is a portion of the common area that's reserved for the exclusive use of one unit. Next slide. So as I just mentioned, there's sort of three basic components of all condo projects, big or small. You have the unit, when that's the separate interest of an owner. The unit may be within a larger building or home. It may be physically attached to the primary home, but otherwise separate. That looks like the picture on the screen there. And then it also may be just a separate standalone building, like a cottage or a prefabricated mini unit. Then there's the common area. Again, that's the area outside of the units that's shared by the owners and occupants. The common area is typically managed by the homeowners association, the HOA for the project. The common area may include a shared exterior front or rear yard, a shared garage, or shared portions of a building. And then there's the exclusive use common area, which is a portion of the common area, but it's been designated for the exclusive use of one unit. So it's outside of the units in the common area, but it's been designated for the exclusive use of one unit. Examples are a private yard or patio, a private garage, a designated parking space in a garage, or a private storage room. Next slide. So now I'm going to provide a brief overview of the primary sort of condo and subdivision mapping laws. As with any condo project in the state of California, big or small, the two primary state laws governing condominiums and subdivision mapping are the Subdivision Map Act and the Davis-Sterling Common Interest Development Act. Those are the state level laws. Now, they're also the local laws, and in particular, the condo maps have to comply with the local subdivision mapping ordinances of the city or county. All ADU condos have to have an ADU condo map, and that map must be created in conformance with the Subdivision Map Act, but the Map Act is implemented by the local city or county through its own local mapping ordinance. Next slide. So this is an overview of the local subdivision and condo map process. The state law Subdivision Map Act is just sort of background. Really, the mapping process is controlled by the local ordinance, the local city or county. Each city or county has its own subdivision condo mapping ordinance and process that must be followed. All ADU condo maps must be approved by the local jurisdiction. Typically, because ADU projects are smaller, the map will be called a parcel map. And that's a particular type of map, and it's more of a simpler, straightforward kind of map. And an application for a parcel map must be submitted to the city or county, and that's how San Jose does it, like most cities. The map must be prepared by a licensed land surveyor. Many people think the architect can do it, or maybe an engineer, but pursuant to state law, you have to have a licensed land surveyor prepare the map. And then once the map is approved by the city or county, then it's eventually recorded with the county recorder. And it has to be done prior to selling or separately financing the ADU condo. Next slide. The other primary state law governing all condos is the Davis-Sterling Common Interest Development Act. It applies to every condo project from 2 units to 1,000 units. It governs all condos and HOAs. And AB 1033 specifically requires that ADU condos are created pursuant to the Davis-Sterling Act. Just in the basic components that are required by the Davis-Sterling Act are: you have to have a condominium declaration, or the CC&Rs. You have to have an HOA, which is the owners association. You have to have a condominium plan, which are the unit diagrams. And then before you actually implement the HOA, before you sell a unit, you have to have a budget for the shared expenses for the condo project. Next slide. So here's a little bit more detail about the sort of basic components of all condo projects. There are sort of 3 basic components that every condo project in the state has, big or small. They all have a condominium map, a condominium plan, and the CC&Rs. The condominium map is a type of subdivision map, but it's for condominium purposes. It doesn't necessarily technically subdivide the land itself, but it's still considered to be a subdivision map. And it's one of the foundational documents for all condo projects in the state. The application for the condo map must be submitted to the local jurisdiction for review and approval. As I mentioned, it must be prepared by a licensed land surveyor, and the condo map must be signed by the lender or the bank who has a loan on the property. And that's important, especially for ADU condos, which I'll talk about later. Next slide. Now there's the condo plan. So the condo map I just mentioned, it does not typically show any detail of the condo units or the common areas. It just shows an outline of the property, of the land itself. There's a separate document called a condominium plan, and that's the legal name of this document. The condominium plan Sometimes people call it the unit diagrams. It's what shows the detail of the project, of the condos and the common areas. It'll show the condo units, it'll show the common areas, it'll show any exclusive use common areas. It's really sort of the most important document once to really establish the specifics of a condo project, an ADU condo project, is the condo plan. It also must be prepared by the licensed land surveyor, which would typically be the same surveyor that you hire to prepare your condo map. You'll have them also prepare your condo plan. Next slide. And finally, as I mentioned, the sort of third primary document for all condo projects are the CC&Rs. The CC&Rs have been referred to as the constitution for a condo project. It's really the primary governing document for all condo projects in the state. And even a 2-unit ADU condo project has to have the CC&Rs. It covers all the important issues, such as easements, rights to share the property, exclusive use rights, any maintenance, shared maintenance obligations, or maintenance obligations of an individual owner. If there's cost sharing, which there's likely some cost sharing, any use restrictions on one or both of the units. Importantly, there has to be provisions for the lender's rights and protections. Insurance is covered, and then also dispute resolution in the case that there's any dispute between the unit owners. The CC&Rs will require that an HOA must be formed, and the members of the HOA are the owners of the condo units. So if you have a 2-unit ADU condo project, you'll have a 2-member HOA. If you have 3 ADU, 3 condos, you'll have a 3-member HOA. Then again, there's the 3 primary documents: the condo map, the condo plan, and the CC&Rs. The final versions, approved versions of those documents, all have to be recorded in with the county recorder, and your project's not really complete and good to go until all 3 of those documents are recorded. Next slide. So here's a few others, just sort of miscellaneous considerations for an ADU condo project. As I mentioned, the existing lender or bank that holds a mortgage or a deed of trust on the property must sign a written consent to the condo map and the condominium plan. This is specifically required for an ADU condo project. It's written in AB 1033, so it has to happen for an ADU condo. So it would be prudent to contact the lender or the bank prior to moving forward with the ADU condo process to make sure they will approve it. If the lender or bank won't approve it for whatever reason, then the owner might consider getting a new mortgage with a different lender that will approve the ADU condo documents. Also, the AB 1033 requires that utility companies that provide service to the property must be provided notice of the ADU condo project. I don't know if a utility company would do anything about it, or but that might depend. But they have to be provided notice. And then if you live in a project, if an owner lives in a project that is a existing condo project or a planned development, or if there's an existing HOA, then the HOA must be provided notice of an owner's intent to condo convert or build a new ADU condo, and likely the HOA has to give its approval. There's some gray area there. Most likely the HOA has to give its approval before you can move forward with that. So that's my my presentation there. I'm happy to answer any other questions that may arise. Thank you, and I'll hand it off to Rafael. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. Oh, I missed my last page. Sorry about that. Forgot I have one more page. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to provide just sort of an overview of the professionals that are required. So as I mentioned a couple times, there has to be a licensed land surveyor prepare both the condo map and the condo plan. That'll be someone you'll want to engage early in the process, because one of the first steps in the process for the condo side of things is the parcel map. You have to have an attorney to prepare your CC&Rs. You might need bylaws and other documents. The attorney also provides general advice and guidance through the entire ADU process. For example, I've been doing condo and HOA law for 20 years, so I can answer pretty much any questions you might have about anything, the CC&Rs, the map, the condo plan, the budget, just the general process. And then, before you sell a unit, you have to have a budget. You have to hire a budget consultant. And then finally, you also want to work with a title company as well. And they're all familiar with that, so they can help you out with some things as well. All right, now I'll turn it over to Rafael. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. My name is Rafael Perez. I'm the board chair of the Casita Coalition. And as my day job, I'm a realtor and adjunct at a community college. As a realtor, I've seen the need for more inventory. There's buyers out there who are absolutely qualified. They've been saving their down payment, and there's just no starter home inventory. So, that's why we're going to discuss how these can be financed to be created and purchased, and what the different options look like. Next slide, please. Here's some quotes just to why ADUs are great starter homes, right? Condoized ADUs are the least expensive form of urban infill for new housing production. Cole Peterson, one of our board members, said that. In Seattle in 2022, about half of all ADUs built were condo converted, added 416 ADU condos to the market. Those are 416 new homeownership opportunities. Portland ADU condos sell for 40 to 60% of what a single detached home would sell for in that exact same neighborhood, right? So not only are you creating the inventory, you're also creating affordability in areas that otherwise would be out of reach for a lot of these home buyers looking to get into the market. Next slide, please. Building an ADU and condo converting it is a great investment and well worth the effort. As somebody mentioned here, I have a much more comfortable retirement. I'm mortgage free with a small HOA payment and a perfect home, garden, and patio for my older years. So the ability to age in place without having to relocate and still be able to eliminate the mortgage is one of the primary drivers in many of these ADU condo conversions. The ability to have the flexibility of either selling the ADU or selling the original home, right? Since both become condominiums, there's some flexibility there. Oftentimes people will build a new ADU to suit their needs and are able to sell the home that's maybe larger than what they now need, and able to either get a next generation of a family member or community member into that home. Next slide. So why ADU condos? There's a few different ways that these are really approached and what the motives are for ADU condos. One example of that is a homeowner can convert an existing ADU into a condo, or permit an existing unpermitted ADU, make it permitted, and then convert to a condo. They can also sell the existing home or ADU to adult children to help them build equity. So at a time when a lot of families are seeing their grown children unable to stay in the communities they grew up in, this gives families who have property the opportunity to open that door to homeownership for their own family members, the people they care about most. Also, it helps people with the need to downsize, either financially downsize or downsize literally in the size of the home, by helping, and working in partnership with their children to build an ADU and convert into condos. It also builds future wealth building opportunities, and also a consideration for people who are thinking about estate planning. Some people may want to have a more strategic estate plan, and being able to create condos may help them facilitate that. And finally, family members who are purchasing a home with an existing ADU, it gives them flexibility down the road to, in the future, separate that or create home ownership opportunities for their own children who may not be grown yet, but may not see the hope of homeownership in many of the communities across, especially in California. I see this, as I mentioned, often with people who are just trying to stay in the city they grew up in, and the pricing pressures due to limited inventory keep pushing them further and further away from the city, and many times further and further out of the state. And of course, these are just some examples, but there's so many other options that people can use as a motive or as an approach to creating these. Next slide. Now, here's some scenarios for financing considerations. As is true with most first-time homebuyers, they don't have a big pile of cash to pay cash, so it's going to need to be financed. The same is true for many homeowners who are looking to add an ADU. They may not have the construction costs. So financing plays a huge role both in the sale and purchase and development of an ADU. So the first scenario is there's already a home with an existing ADU. The owner lives in it. The lender has provided consent to record. In the passing of this bill, we did reach out to FHFA and spoke to other lenders, and they do have the ability to consent. The servicer is going to look at certain things. They may look at how much equity the resulting unit will still have in the property. They may want it cross-collateralized until the sale, and ensuring that the proceeds go to pay off or pay down the existing mortgage. All of that will be the conversation had with the loan servicer. And homeowners that that need funds for development but don't want to get rid of their existing mortgage, they may have to look at liquidating cash or other private second mortgage type options for the development or the fees and costs of converting that. In scenario 2, there's a homeowner. There's a primary home with a non-professional owner, right? That's conventional owner-occupied loan for renovation. The homeowner can have access to renovation financing to first develop the ADU, right? There's not an ADU in place. They need financing to build it. They can get a renovation mortgage, finance the ADU addition, depending on the loan type, whether it's a conventional, Fannie, Freddie, or FHA. The configurations may vary. For example, FHA currently still requires that an ADU be attached to an existing structure, whereas the conventional renovation options will allow for a detached ADU. Another consideration is how each of the programs considers ADU rental income in the equation to qualify, in the way that it impacts its debt to income ratios. So FHA, for example, now allows up to 50% of future rental income to be considered as qualifying income to qualify. Whereas with the conventional options, they may or may not, some may only consider the rent on existing units. So those are all questions to discuss with your lender, but there are definitely renovation options out there for the construction. And scenario 3 is a mixture of residential and commercial financing, or private lending or hard money. Owner financing for the purchase and the renovation, then developer financing for the ADU build after condo conversion for the home and new lots. So if when a city or county adopts their ordinance, they allow for the condo map and everything else to be filed prior to the unit existing, then that separate unit would then be able to be financed with development financing. So those are just 3 scenarios on how financing can come into play. Obviously, the owner occupancy versus investor owned is going to play a big role in this. Unlike SB 9, AB 1033 does not have a requirement that the developer be an owner. So there could be a scenario where there's lender developers who have different commercial type financing in place to develop the project and sell them off, and ideally to owner occupants, as our guidance memo suggests that cities and counties do. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to, speaking of cities that have implemented this and have made decisions on how to roll this out and adopt a local ordinance, Martina Davis and Aparna Ankola from the city of San Jose are joining us today to share what's going on and how San Jose has implemented this. Hand it off. Thank you.
All right. Hello, so my name's Martina Davis, and I am a division manager with the City of San Jose Planning Division, and I'm joined by Aparna Ankola on my team. She's the real mastermind behind our ordinance. Next slide, please. So just real quick, we were asked to talk about why the city did this and then walk you through our process. I think this can be fairly short because we did actually stick pretty closely to the state law. So a lot of what you just heard today is what we're going to be looking for in our process. But why we did this. So again, I think you just heard really good reasons for why ADU condos, and those are really why San Jose did it. We took an ordinance to our city council in December of 2023 to do a variety of code updates, including some ADU code updates. When we did that, we thought we were done with our work updating the code, and council said, you get more work. And as part of the action of approving that, they directed us to please go ahead and come back to them as soon as possible with an ordinance adopting AB 1033. So that is what we did. I actually looked up the memo that some of the council members wrote about why they wanted us to do it, and they cited home ownership opportunities. We see a good production of ADUs in San Jose. They're popular, they're widely accepted, and if they can become ownership opportunities, I think no one saw a downside and everyone just saw upsides. I don't have the exact quote, but I believe the mayor cited something around concerns with brain drain and talent loss, right? Are people going to leave our area to move somewhere where they can afford to buy a home? So there was some urgency here to create home ownership opportunities. So we went ahead and we got an ordinance done in about 6 months. Next slide, please. And yeah, with that, I don't see her face, but you can probably hear her. She's talking. I'm going to turn it over to Aparna to talk about the permitting process. As was just mentioned, it is going to be a parcel map. So that would be our application form. And with that, I'm going to mute and let Aparna take it from here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aparna Ankola. So as Martina mentioned, the AB 1033 implementation includes a parcel map approval that's similar to a process that's currently in place for SB9 projects. This is an administrative process with no public hearing. We've created an application checklist and incorporated information on the city's webpage to assist our customers. The applicants could proceed to the parcel map submittal once they meet the conditions on the checklist and the necessary documentation is available for submittal. This approval process could take 3 to 4 months based on the completeness of the application. The recordation of the parcel map, condo plan, bylaws, and CCNRs will occur after the parcel map approval. Next slide, please. So here are some mandatory submittal requirements that staff has identified, including the application checklist, the ADU permit issuance, the lien holder approval, notification to utility, HOA formulation, a condo plan, including all common areas, and a detailed site plan. It provides the HOAs with authority to develop the CCNRs, as Jay mentioned, and regulate their maintenance, repair, and replacement of common areas. One of the critical requirements that we've incorporated is for the property owner to obtain their lien approval. And the conveyance of utilities must be addressed by the property owner and building safety inspection completed before the approval of the parcel map. You can contact us at City of San Jose for any additional information, and we'll hand it back to Anne.
Thank you, Aparna. And thanks to Jay, Rafael, and Martina as well. With that, I'd like to get all presenters on screen, and looks like we've got us. We have roughly 20 minutes for questions now. So thank you to all of you who have placed those in the Q&A. Feel free to keep putting more questions in, but having collected a few that we've seen, let me start with one general question that there seems to be maybe some confusion on and point that to Jay. I think it's unclear about land ownership in this. who owns the land? And there's kind of a related question about the potential for a 99-year land lease. Could you speak a
Yeah,
little more to that and options there?
sure, yeah. Well, the the land in a condo project is typically designated as common area. So it would be sort of shared ownership by the two condo owners, or it could be owned by the HOA. But it's typically a shared ownership, and then the units are sort of carved out of the land. The units have boundaries on all sides, so the units sort of sit on top of the land, and they're separate from it. So you have the units, and then the units are like envelopes or cubes, if you will, in a way. And then the land is separate and owned by the HOA or owned by the owners in undivided interest.
Okay, thanks for that, Jay. Go ahead some more
Yeah,
on that, because I think that's confusing and not always intuitive to people who are used to a fee simple kind of combination of a single family home.
yeah, that's the sort of standard, condo structure. Is that the units are sort of defined cubes, and then everything else is the common area, which would include the land. Also, the air above the project is common area. In some ways, you can carve up the land and make the land in part of a condo unit. But that would depend on the particular project, but that may be possible to do that.
Okay, well, we'll get into some more questions related to the complexity and array of options here on that. But first of all, a couple more general ones. Do we know if other cities are working on this, and whether what we know about different procedures that they may be looking at? I don't know if Rafael may have a survey of that, or if that's another one for Jay or anybody else knows.
Yeah, I can kind of share what's going on and one other example in San Diego County. Back in the spring, the Board of Supervisors did direct the staff there to to investigate this. And what they did is they did their research on AB 1033. They looked at their own local ordinances, and then they did a series of outreach events with community groups and with different stakeholders, including Casita Coalition, to really figure out what what some of the legislative intent was, and B, how that would work into the existing fabric of the San Diego County community, particularly in the unincorporated areas. So they just went back last month and presented it with a couple of other ordinance changes regarding land use to the Board of Supervisors, and they've now directed that they move forward. The way staff presented it is they gave them a couple of options. Option A was for them to just adopt state law as it was written and essentially incorporate that, very similar to what San Jose has done. Or option B would be to have a more customized approach where they start kind of fine-tuning some of the additional requirements or some additional considerations into their ordinance. An example of that is San Diego County is very interested in putting a priority for owner occupants. So they're considering a first right of refusal to owner occupant buyers in the first 45 to 60 days. There was some concerns in the community about future dispute resolution. And although the CCNRs already account for that, sometimes the public feels a lot more comfortable where there's some redundancy that very specifically points out that dispute resolution must be addressed in the CCNRs. So that's another consideration they're looking at, just to have some stronger language there. And then some other thoughts that have come up, is around Assembly Bill 2533, which allows the streamlined permitting of unpermitted units. How does that get impacted, and how do you factor that into this? A thought process around that is mandating a disclosure at the point of sale when something is a former beneficiary of ADU amnesty, so that next homeowner is aware of how it was permitted as an ADU. So there's a lot of things that can be done that are not going to necessarily be counterproductive, but will ensure that you're both, really making sure that your future home buyers are getting into something that's going to be a great investment, and prioritizing the people who, in this case, the Board of Supervisors really wanted to make sure these units end up in the hands of owner occupants.
Okay.
But so I think there's both are all great approaches. One is there's an emergency, let's get it implemented as soon as possible, and we applaud San Jose for doing that. And that's why local implementation is required. All right, because every community is going to have different levels of urgency, different levels of needs, and this allows the elected officials to really fine tune it and work with staff to get it right.
I think I'll shoot a question back to you, Martina, because there was a question on timing and process that kind of gets into a bunch of the other questions that I think will mostly go to Jay on HOA and CCNR setup. But I want to confirm the question asked about timing, and the application doesn't have to go in for the condoization before the ADU is built, correct? I mean, I would expect most requests would come in after the ADU is finalized sometime in the future, really.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't have to be. And again, like with the one we have, my preference would be don't submit it before you even start constructing your ADU, because what that's going to do is that's going to make our processing times look really, really bad because we're kind of sitting on it waiting, right? And then
adding the year for construction.
And I'll file for a year, while we
just
wait.
what you don't want,
Yeah, so, but you can, right? You can, but yeah, no, it really would probably make more sense to have it at least under construction, or, I mean, I think we anticipate seeing it on ADUs that exist already, right? And people are going to buy those.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that with you since that question had come in. And then I think—
If I could add something to that real quick, Anne.
Sure.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important to consider is every single property is going to be absolutely different, right? The way the CCNRs impact are going to depend on the property size, the lot configuration, but also the current owner's, lending situation. They may have a mortgage that is, 80% of the way paid off. They may have a quicker turnaround to get lender consent than somebody who just bought a few years ago, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of variables in place, and the resulting units also are going to have a lot of variables in place. Everything from very small units to units that look just like a single family home. So I think that's also another consideration for everybody to realize, is that the timing is also going to be a result of the combination of all those variables.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's a really important one in this, and a challenge with each project being so different depending on a lot of considerations. Let's talk a little bit about what kinds of ADUs can be converted to condos. And there are a number of questions about utility options. So I'm not sure who that's best directed to, if that's a question to Martina or anyone else wants to jump on that one. Martina, maybe you first.
You want me to talk about utilities or which kinds of ADUs?
Well, I don't know if they're lumped together. Start quickly with what kinds and then utilities. We have about 2 or 3 minutes left. So see what you can do with them.
All right. So yeah, your standard ADU. So this would be subdividing your standard ADUs. So JADUs are actually considered a room on the house that has the flexibility to be rented separately, but it's really not a separate unit. So a JADU, a junior ADU, wouldn't be able to be subdivided as a condominium. So that we're really talking your traditional ADUs, so not JADUs. San Jose, for what it's worth, also allows tiny homes on wheels. Those also would not be able to be subdivided. And then
attached or detached.
Yes, sorry about that clarification. Yes, attached or detached,
including
can be subdivided.
Could become subdivided, right? So just the one no is no JADU. Other than that, yeah, you can subdivide your ADUs.
On the JADU, if it's attached to the single family home and there's a detached ADU, those can be subdivided, right? The house with the JADU as one condo, and then the detached ADU as a second condo. So the existence of a JADU doesn't preclude it. It just can't be separated as its own unit.
Correct. Yeah, and that JADU, because it's supposed to go with the primary home, would have to remain with the primary home, right? And then
and then you've got a minute for utilities, or
utilities. we're leaving that up to the utility company generally. So generally speaking, yeah, what we understand is that power and gas would have to be separated. I believe they already do for ADUs. We've talked to our building department. They said just about everyone they see, if not everyone, they are already separate gas and water. So, or excuse me, gas and power. Typically, we do see water and sewer not be separated, and we are not requiring them to be separated. As the city, if your utility company, typically the water utility in San Jose is a private company in most cases. If they require a separation, you'd have to work through that with them. We don't believe they will. I think the HOA could pay your bill, and then kind of the HOA figures out how to bill the individual units when it comes to water and sewer. So because that is a really big expense to separate those, I will say. So we did not add that requirement, but if the utility wanted to, that would be between you and the utility.
That's helpful to understand, knowing, like you said, that could be a big one if there are a lot of requirements there that could add a lot of cost for extra metering. So that would also be important then to think about in the HOA documents of how that would be spelled out if there's flexibility there. Yeah, well, everyone, we're out of time right now. So really appreciate the questions that came in, and thanks to all the panelists, Jay, Rafael, Martina, and Aparna, for joining us today. And on behalf of the Casita Coalition, thank you to everyone out there as well, again. And we invite other ADU and middle housing professionals, community-based organizations, and homeowners to add your voice and join the conversation by becoming a member of the Casita Coalition at casitacoalition.org. You'll find lots of resources on our website, including guidebooks on ADU and middle housing related subjects, including the updated AB 1033 guidance memo, which is also in the chat, the link to that we talked about today. Be sure to check out our brand new Build the Middle playbook for middle housing advocates and policymakers on our media and publications page. You can keep up to date on all of our events and stay informed with ADU and middle housing news by joining our mailing list or becoming a member at casitacoalition.org. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.